Hi, my name's John Cordy and all I want for Christmas is a fair chance to prove my innocence. So in this video I just wanted to talk about some of my thoughts on modelers and the state of the modelling world, and maybe sort of gear demos in general or anything like that. I think probably some of you might recall about a year ago that the Iridium was kind of the big ticket item at the time, although NAMM was just around the corner where we would then see the first kind of stuff about the Quad Cortex pop up. This was the thing that was being talked about quite a bit, certainly by me anyway and other people, and sort of this triumph in a way, because it was making what people like about some of the Helix stuff and all that stuff super accessible in an easy format to use, and where basically you don't have any menus particularly or anything particularly complex, but you can just go on there and you choose your Fender, your Vox or your Marshall style amp. Basically sounds good with pedals, and you don't necessarily have to go down the old IR hunting route unless you really wanted to. I don't see many people talking about the Iridium too much anymore at the moment. I'm not exactly sure why that is, but I think everything these days seems to have a fair old marketing push behind it. And some of that I think is worth listening to, and some of it is worth taking with a pinch of salt, I think, as well. If you take the Iridium out of the equation, what you're left with are things like the Kemper, the Helix, the Axe FX, the FM3, you know, the Hotone Ampero, all these bits and pieces, headrush gigboard, pedalboard. They're all kind of within a ballpark. And so when people ask me, you know, which do you prefer out of these, which invariably happens because people have to make a choice about what they're going to buy, and I think it makes as much sense to ask someone who has many of the devices as anyone else what they actually use. I point to the Helix and say this is what I spend most of my time with. I don't necessarily say that I'm not biased, but my point is that I spend most time with the Helix, and as a result I feel like I get the best results out of the Helix. I think the Kemper I can also get pretty good results out of, and if I spent more time with that I think good things could come from it. But I find the Helix is a really creative platform for me, and it kind of inspires me to do bits and pieces. But to me this kind of debate and argument is roughly similar to saying, well, which is the best digital audio workstation? People used to kind of argue about, you know, maybe Pro Tools is better, I prefer Logic, Cubase is rubbish, you know, you hear these kind of things. That sort of talk used to be a thing, but I think we've roughly reached a point now where everyone is happy with whichever digital audio workstation they use, and no one is going to go up to a producer and say, I don't respect your work because you're using Reaper, or I don't respect your work because you're using Logic. If you can deliver a result, that's what people are basically after, and that's the same kind of way that I view the Helix, the Kemper, the Axe FX, and eventually when it comes to people's hands, the Quad Cortex as well. I think roughly they will sound all similar, and you'll be able to achieve similar results with all of them. The only thing is at the moment the Kemper can't do dual amps, or the FM3 can't do dual amps. Whether that will change in the future remains to be seen. But aside from that, they're all roughly similar. You can move things around a signal chain. You can bring up amps that sound roughly like what you think they should sound like. You know, a Vox AC30 across all of the devices will sound slightly different, but you can kind of pin them in that Vox AC30, whatever that is, box. And so that's what I mean when I've said that I think the modeler that's best for you is the one that you spend most time with. So this was why I made a decision a little while back to spend more time with the Helix, because I thought I can get better results out of this if I put more time into it. Similarly, if I spent all of my time split between using Reaper, Pro Tools and Cubase, I think it would slow down my workflow considerably, and so pick the one that works for you the best, I think is the general advice. You will read comments from people saying that one sounds miles ahead of the other, but I think fairly reasonably in the middle ground you'll probably have people that have experience with all of them, and you'll probably find that the general consensus is the Helix has a beautiful user interface, the Kemper has incredible amp modelling or profiling, whatever, the Axe FX has a lot of power. All these kind of things, there are things that people like about all of them, and there are things that people will say, you know, I had to do more to get the same sound out of one thing or the other. And all of that is just to say each of them has their plus points, each of them potentially has a negative. Not every company is going to get everything that you want right, but there are compromises that you can make across all the devices, And so whatever device you end up using at the time, I think you'll probably find that you'll get similar results whatever you're using, probably. What I mean by this is basically Rabia Masad, for example, uses all of these devices, and to me sounds like Rabia, whatever he's using. Martin Miller, again, has used atomic amplifiers, he's used Axe effects, and recently used Quad Cortex. To me, it doesn't make any fundamental difference to his real kind of tones. It seems that whatever he's using, he dials in something that sounds very similar to me. So what? Well, I guess you can find John Mayer, for example, has got a Kemper. You can find plenty of people that have got a Helix. You can find loads of people with Axe effects, and you're going to now start to see lots of people with a Quad Cortex. To be honest, it doesn't really matter what anyone else is using. Your journey starts with you and whatever modeler you end up with. And for you to get the best results out of it, you probably need to spend a bit of time with it to know how it works, whether it's a GT1000, a Helix, a Kemper, whatever it is. The more time you spend with it, kind of the better results you'll probably get, I think. I've found that chopping and changing between modelers, you start to get the overwhelming feeling that they basically all do a similar thing and sound broadly the same, and none of them actually sound like a valve amp in the room. So that's the kind of feeling that I've started to have. But at the same time, when I go into my Helix or my Kemper or whatever, I'm not necessarily trying to sound like an amp in the room. I'm trying to do a thing like a sound design thing. Maybe I'm trying to do some creative freezing and, you know, playing sort of stuff that I'm not really able to achieve with a pedal board and a amp. Generally, the stuff that I'm doing on the Helix is a little bit more complicated than that. I might even be doing, you know, widespread double track and rhythm stuff, even though it's a simple kind of preset. That's not particularly possible with my real amps, and certainly not without being quite loud, and certainly not without setting up microphones and all of this possibility for errors where I'd get probably worse results than I can get with a digital device. So yeah, pick your poison. Don't feel afraid that you've made a choice. I think all of the choices that you've got in modelers these days are broadly good. Maybe we will see the Quad Cortex take some sort of supremacy, or maybe we won't. Maybe Kemper will come out with a design in 2 years that people go, wow. Maybe they won't. Maybe Line 6 will come up with something else. Maybe Axe Effects will continue motoring ahead and trying to create the kind of craziest spec things that they can. Fractal audio, I mean. Maybe they won't. I think we reached the point a while ago where it's very difficult to distinguish whether someone was using a digital modeler in a mix or using a real amp. So that kind of thing has been and gone. It's now just about whether you can get the results that you want out of whatever you've chosen. And I think that's why it helps to have people online maybe that are making videos that are showing how they do different bits and pieces with the device. I think that's kind of where we can bring some value to the demo space, if it has any value whatsoever. But mostly what I'm trying to do here is just play guitar and then show you sometimes how I've done what I've done. And I think that's also why recently I moved away from doing just gear demos into the kind of talking about what people are asking about, maybe chords and licks and that sort of stuff. Anyway, hopefully that ramble from nowhere that no one asked for makes sense. Broad summary, that's me just saying that I think modelers we can basically treat as like making a DAW choice. They're all much of a muchness. All can sound really great, all can sound really poor as well, depending on what you do with them. But I think it makes sense to try and spend a lot of time with one modeler or a couple to really try and get good results out of them before you make a big judgment one way or the other. Stick with it for a while, maybe. If you want to like and subscribe, you could. If you want the presets that you heard me playing through at the start of the video, they're in my folder. Thank you for stopping by. You could leave a comment and tell me I'm completely wrong and that one device sounds 100 times better than the other if you want to. But yeah, cheers.